Welcome! This is the third video in a 5-part video series that I've created regarding the abuse I've endured and the subsequent court case I've opened on my ex-boyfriend and abuser, Kai Weiss. The entirety of the case began on December 8th, 2021 and ended on April 20th, 2023. You are now watching part 3 of 5. This video was completed on Saturday, June 24th, 2023. Here is the video. Now that I've fully explained the timeline, processes, provisions, adaptations, and many renditions of my EPO, PPO, and PO, as well as the preliminary trial hearing on April 15th, 2022, and the protective order appeal hearing on September 12th, 2022, we are finally entering into the second half of this video, which will be covering the first 2 violations I alleged Kai made to the protective orders you have already been informed about in the last video. Editing Omnia here. Sorry, I recognize this video has barely even started yet, and I'm already adding in edits. Basically, what had happened was I forgot a really fundamental and important part of this video when I first made it, that being the definition of a protective order violation and what would typically count as a protective order violation. That's why I wanted to add this in, because it'll set you up to better understand what I'll be talking about in the rest of this video as well as the one after that. So, assuming you watched the previous video in the series, you know what a protective order is and the general reasons behind why a victim of abuse might ask for one. Very briefly, a protective order violation is basically when the respondent or the abuser disrespects one or more of the provisions a protective order grants the petitioner or the victim. So essentially, if you have a no contact order of protection, for example, like the one I have, that means that the abuser cannot contact their victim in any way, shape, or form, whether in person or electronically. So if Kai contacts me, that is in direct violation of the no contact provision, and that would count as a violation of the protective order. Similarly, if Kai is within 250 feet of my person, property, or place of employment, that would also count as a violation of the protective order. Attached on screen now are multiple different examples of how a respondent can violate a protective order, but the long and short of it is, any act taken by the respondent that undermines or disrespects any of the provisions a petitioner has been granted as part of their protective order would constitute a violation of said protective order. Protective order violations are a criminal offense, and I allege that Kai broke mine 4 times in total. This video will be going over the evidence I can provide of it happening the first 2 times, and then the video after that will be going over the evidence I have of the last 2 times. Hopefully that makes sense. On to the rest of the video. This part will mainly be a recap of 2 Twitter threads I created about the violations, both of which I made and released on my Twitter account back on April 23rd of this year. I'm also fully aware that Kai made an entire hour-long video about these threads alone, and I'll be covering the claims he makes about the PO violations specifically. Meaning, no, I will not be going through every single thing he says in this video, but I will be going over everything that has to do with the protective order violations, which is the topic of this video. Anything I don't cover in this video or the next 2 videos I'll be making will be addressed in a stream if the demand is there. Let's hop right in with the first thread. The first time my abuser directly violated my protective order, including the evidence I have of Kai's first PO violation. A thread. On December 8th, 2021, Kai was served a preliminary protective Hold up. I definitely meant to say emergency protective order here. Might be. Let me correct myself. On December 8th, 2021, Kai was served an emergency protective order at 6:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. A mere 19 minutes later, he writes a threatening note in my Notes app. How is this a violation, you ask? Kai would frequently leave notes in my Notes app by logging into my Apple devices at home. I then attached this screenshot of a note left in my Notes app on December 8th, 2021 at 6:34 p.m. The note reads, "Eventually this will catch up to you." Let's recall back to the EPO I mentioned in my previous video, which I had requested that same day. Do y'all remember what time that was issued? I don't either. Let's check together. Oh, would you look at that? It was issued at 2:54 p.m., meaning the magistrate signed and approved of it no later than 3 p.m. that day. Kai insisted that 1, he didn't write this, and 2, he wasn't served the paperwork for this protective order at 6:15 p.m., but provides no other alternative time he could have been served the EPO. Here's what he says.
I did not write this. I am aware of the note, and the reason that it did not hold up in litigation is because the note appeared before the protective order was even filed.
First off, the reason why this charge didn't go to trial is not because the note appeared before the protective order was served to him. It was, like I said in part 1 of this video series, because Kai took a plea deal. If anything, this specific protective order violation did hold up in litigation because it wasn't dismissed during the preliminary trial hearing we had on April 15, 2022, which is a hearing that exists solely to determine if there is sufficient evidence to charge a defendant on the crimes they allegedly committed, and, if so, escalate the case to a jury trial. On March 28, 2022, a subpoena was left on my front door indicating to me that I was summoned by the courts to testify as a witness to the preliminary trial hearing on April 15th at 11 a.m. Now, you may be wondering, what exactly is a preliminary trial hearing? A preliminary trial is a hearing done with a judge to determine if the prosecution, which would be me or the state, has sufficient evidence to actually constitute a full-blown jury trial. The prosecution must demonstrate that enough evidence exists to charge the defendant, or Kai in this case, for the 5 charges we obtained arrest warrants on him for, those being felony theft, strangulation, preventing a 911 call, domestic assault and battery, and 1 violation of my protective order. Preliminary hearings are not always required, and the defendant can choose to waive it. It's essentially like a mini trial. The prosecution will call witnesses and introduce evidence. As shown by my subpoena, I was a witness the state called upon to testify, and the defense, or Kai and his lawyer, can cross-examine said witnesses, which they absolutely did. However, the defense cannot object to using certain evidence, and in fact, evidence is allowed to be presented at a preliminary hearing that could not be shown to a jury at trial. If the judge concludes there is probable cause to believe the crime was committed by the defendant, then a trial will soon be scheduled. However, if the judge does not believe the evidence establishes probable cause that the defendant committed the offense, they will dismiss the charges right then and there. I'm sure you can guess what the outcome of my preliminary trial hearing was. Unsurprisingly, the judge determined that I proved probable cause for all 5 charges I had obtained arrest warrants on. And I must reiterate, not a single one of the criminal charges I testified on were dismissed. Every single charge carried over into the trial. If I had made as basic and fundamental of an error as citing an incorrect time for when the EPO was served to Kai, then you would think the magistrate who filed the PO violation would have easily caught that. And let's entertain the idea that the magistrate didn't catch that. You would think the judge who sat in on the preliminary trial hearing would have caught that. But no, both times the charge passed right on through and was never dismissed because, and this goes into point 2, I personally asked the police officer who notified Kai of the EPO about the timing of when Kai was served it, meaning what exact time was written in the police paperwork for when Kai was presented with the EPO documents and told to leave my apartment. And the officer told me that Kai was officially served at 6:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So actually, yes, this note did appear 19 minutes after the EPO was served to Kai. But for shits and giggles, let's entertain the belief that Kai is right and that he wasn't served the EPO at 6:15 p.m. Then when was it served? Why can't he give us a specific alternative time? All he says is, it wasn't served at 6:15 p.m., and that's it. Kai insisting that 6:15 p.m. is an incorrect time isn't sufficient evidence, especially considering that 1, a third-party police officer stated otherwise, 2, he refuses to provide a specific alternative time for when it was served, and 3, he just generally gives liar liar pants on fire with most things involving this case. So instead, let me provide you with actual evidence that does corroborate what the officer told me. The officer said that Kai was officially served the EPO at 6:15 p.m. This makes perfect sense because on that same day, Kai was trying to find me at a certain location at my school and left my apartment to attempt to find me at around 4:30 p.m. as seen in this screenshot of his text with me. He says, "Hannah, where are you? I'm coming to," insert one of my school's buildings names, "now." And those messages are sent at 4:23 p.m. and 4:29 p.m. respectively. Then by 5:13 p.m. he says, "I need all my stuff back if I'm going to be leaving today, plus the Apple Watch. I can't believe you would do this. We literally agreed to me staying until February. I'm on my way home. I'll be gone by tonight. My brother is coming by." These were all sent between 5:13 p.m. and 5:14 p.m. Obviously, Kai had to have been made aware by somebody that he is going to be removed from my apartment for him to text me this. How would Kai know he was going to be quote-unquote leaving today if he wasn't made aware by an officer that he was being forcibly removed from my residence? Cause I clearly never told him. These text messages are evidence enough that I stopped replying to him long before 4 p.m. that day. The fact of the matter is, Kai was told. Kai made it to the school building I was hiding in, but the police were aware he was headed over to my location because I had informed them of such. An officer waiting inside of the building told Kai that he needed to go back to my apartment because there was paperwork waiting to be served to him and that he would be forced to leave today. So Kai walked back to my apartment by 5:14 p.m., stopped sharing his location with me by 5:53 p.m., and then stopped messaging me afterwards. The reasons behind why that is are obvious, because at that point he was catching on to the idea about what was happening. After this, he was then served the EPO papers and told by an officer that it is illegal for him to contact me. So he stopped contacting me, at least in an overt way.
The real reason that Omnia was able to get this charge to be accepted by their county's magistrate is because they attached a removal of their channel to it in their police report.
This This is so funny. The real reason why I was able to get this violation accepted by my county's magistrate was not because I attached a removal of my channel to it in my police report. If Kai genuinely believes this, then I honestly am unsure if Kai knows how protective orders work. Assuming you watched part 2.0, you guys definitely know better. As stated in part 2.0, protective orders exist to protect the health and safety of an abused person and their family or household members. This is facilitated through provisions, which are clearly outlined and stated in the order. So, to protect me from Kai, a judge can establish a stay away provision in the order, stating that Kai cannot be in my physical presence. We also know from the previous video that I was given 3 provisions on my EPO. Where, of these 3 provisions, does it say that Kai shall not delete Omnia's YouTube channel? Because why would Kai deleting my channel warrant a violation of my protective order charge if that isn't an explicit provision written in it? Like, really? Come the fuck on, dude. The real reason why I was able to get this violation accepted by my county's magistrate was because I was able to demonstrate probable cause that Kai would be the one to engage in this type of bullshit. And the way I demonstrated that is talked about in subsequent parts of the thread. So let's continue. Since my notes are synced through iCloud, anything he wrote in my notes app from my iPad could be seen on my iPhone, Mac, or any other of my Apple products. Throughout our relationship, he would frequently leave me notes on my notes app by logging into my devices at home and then texting me to check my notes app for something he left for me in there while I was out at work or school. Here are some examples of the encouraging notes he would leave for me on my devices prior to my assault on December 3rd, 2021. I then attached 2 examples of notes that Kai had left me in my notes app. One was on August 24th, 2021, and the other on October 29th, 2021. I think it's important to highlight that Kai corroborates that he did indeed leave these notes for me.
Attached to these tweets or notes I would leave Hana whenever she would go out.
And that he would often leave notes for me on my devices for me to find later.
Every note I would leave Hana would be written from the MacBook Notes app. I didn't do it with just notes either. I also left encouraging sticky notes on the desktop with equally encouraging things.
So he admits here that leaving notes on my devices was a common behavior he would partake in, which is great because at least we can all agree on the fact that it is within the realm of possibility for Kai to engage in this type of PO violation. But this is the part where I think things get interesting.
I had no time to leave any note on the iPad considering I was on the phone at the time with my mother and also talking to the police and gathering my belongings.
So Kai says that he didn't have time to leave any note because he was on the phone with his mom and busy gathering his belongings, right? But in the same video, an odd 15 minutes later, he says this.
Here's one the text Omnia sent to their friend on the day that the protective order was filed. I took a picture of it and sent it to my mom so I had something that I could at least show everyone that this entire victim facade is not a real thing.
How does one person lack self-perception to this degree? Because Kai just single-handedly incriminated himself with this clip. So apparently Kai didn't have time to leave a note on my iPad at the time, but Kai had enough time to log into whatever device he's taking this photo from, go to my messages app, find this message, take a photo, then send it to his mom who he's on the phone with a mere 7 minutes prior to when the note is written, but doesn't have time to write it? It's a 7-word sentence, dude. Be fucking for real. I know who I was texting in this photo, so I checked to see the timestamps for myself. At 6:05 p.m. I said, "Hi friend, it's Hana." They replied saying hi at 6:06 p.m. 5 minutes later, at 6:11 p.m. I said, "Hi bestie, things are happening. Many things." 3 minutes later, they asked, "Good things or not so good?" I didn't reply back to them for 20 minutes until 6:34 p.m. where I said, "Not so good. Kai, hit me." In this screenshot of Kai texting his mom, it shows that he sent the photo he took of my conversation with my friend at 6:27 p.m. That's a mere 7 minutes prior to when this note appears in my notes app and 7 minutes before I replied to my friend again. Editing Omnia here, I have a couple things I forgot to add. So first of all, Kai said this.
None of these notes were written on the iPad considering I have no access to the iPad.
But he did. I'll explain how. Kai said he would leave me notes through my Mac, right?
Every note I would leave Hana would be written from the MacBook Notes app.
Meaning Kai had access to my Mac through the associated password. And if he has access to my Mac through the associated password, then he has access to my iPad through the associated password too. You know why? And this is really embarrassing. All of my Apple products have the same passcode. It's the same 4 numbers on all devices. That was such a useless and unnecessary lie. Second of all, I wanted to read the thing Kai writes at the bottom of this. He says, "My mom urged me to grab whatever I could at the time," which goes to show I was on the phone with her. So you went to my iMessages first? This is about the least incriminating thing I have ever seen. Kai really said they used emojis. They didn't get abused, guys. It's all a facade.
Victim facade?
Like, I use emojis all the time, but okay. I sent her a text when all this happened shortly before Hana claims I left left a message on their notes app. I was not in the house for 15 minutes because police were actually serving me / explaining my order. 15 minutes after this message is sent? This is highly unlikely, and here's why. Remember how I said Kai left my apartment to go find me at my school's building at around 4:30 p.m.? Then at around 5:15, Kai turns around to walk back to my apartment because an officer informed him that he is going to be leaving today. Again, I told officers he was trying to find me, so they camped around the school building he indicated he was headed towards. When Kai arrived at the building, the officer redirected him back to my apartment, indicating to him that he has an EPO waiting to be served on him. Kai walks back to my house between 5:14 and 5:53 p.m. He likely gets to my apartment at around 6 p.m. He took the longest route possible, I literally don't know why, but by then, officers are also camped outside my apartment for whenever he arrives. Kai walks up to my door, the police are there, they serve and explain his order to him for 15-ish minutes, and by the end of that, they write down that he was fully served by 6:15 p.m. in their paperwork. Kai definitely did not step foot inside my apartment before he was served, just thought I'd share that. Also, I have to wonder, which device did he take this photo from? Because that definitely looks like my iPad. But even if it wasn't, and it was my Mac, this proves that he had access to and was on a password-protected Apple device of mine that I had left at home less than 10 minutes before the threatening note shows up on my iCloud. I'm sorry, but if you add up the fact that Kai corroborated that it was common practice for him to leave notes on my devices to see later with the fact that he was actively watching me message my friend on an Apple device I had at home while I was away from the apartment, along with the fact that he was sitting there with enough time to send a photo of that text conversation I'm having with my friend to his mom 7 minutes prior to when the note is created, I'm sorry bro, but you just need to take the L. The circumstantial evidence just keeps mounting. I can tell you, I didn't write this to myself. And if you're more likely to believe that I would write this note to myself for the sole purpose of framing Kai for a protective order violation, then, I don't know. The more obvious explanation being that Kai left me the note to instill fear in me for finally standing up for myself for the first time in our relationship by getting a protective order, I can't help you. All I have to say is that this is very much an Occam's razor moment. Editing Omnia here, interjecting again momentarily just to explain what I mean when I say Occam's razor, because I'm really not trying to make this another Tuquicui fallacy moment. So the definition I included on screen reads, Occam's razor is a problem-solving principle that, when presented with competing hypothetical answers to a problem, one should select the one that makes the fewest assumptions. So basically, in this scenario, the problem is the note. The question is, who left the note? Well, it's only physically possible for two people to leave the note, Kai or me. I am claiming that it's Kai, and Kai is claiming it's me. So these are the two competing hypothetical answers to the question. But if we use the principle of Occam's razor, or the path of least resistance, or whatever you want to call it, we have to think about what makes the most sense in this given scenario. And if the answer to the question of who left the note is between either me or Kai, the obvious answer that makes the most sense would be Kai, and here's why. Firstly, I never charged Kai for any criminal offense on December 8th. I only decided to charge him for all the crimes he had committed against me after Kai left my apartment and I realized he stole all my shit, deleted my channel, and left me this threatening note. Why would I be sitting on my own notes app thinking of something cryptic and threatening to write to frame Kai for a protective order violation at that point, especially if I didn't have any intention of charging Kai whatsoever at the point this protective order violation was made. When I went to the police department on December 8th, I only asked for a protective order, not to charge Kai. That's why Kai wasn't arrested and was able to go home and take all my shit with him. I explicitly told the officers that I didn't want to ruin his life over the things he did to me on December 3rd and just wanted him to leave me alone. But after Kai exited my apartment and left it looking the way it did, taking whatever he wanted in the process, deleting my channel, then leaving this note, I knew that being gracious with him or extending him the benefit of not filing criminal charges against him was in vain. So I finally stood up for myself and charged him formally on December 15th, which is why he got arrested again for those charges then. And that's demonstrated in this tweet. Secondly, like I said, I was hiding in a school building surrounded by my supervisors, mentors, and university police away from Kai because Kai claimed he was on his way to find me. It would be really fucking bold of me to write this violation in the same room police are in, let alone assuming I know what time Kai has served the EPO at that point, or that I'm thinking about framing him for a violation. As stated earlier, I was busy texting my friends about what happened to me, not on my notes app. So now, not only is there no incentive, but two, I wasn't really in a physical or mental space to have the privilege of wanting to frame my abuser for more than he's already done to me at that point. It's just very silly to think that it is more likely for me to be thinking about framing Kai over literally trying to hide away from him and informing my friends about my situation again in fear of my own safety. But for Kai, there is 100% incentive, and it also makes sense as to why he would do this. He's upset at me for obtaining the protective order and kicking him out of my apartment, but he can't contact me, so he'll leave a note in my notes app app like he has in the past, hoping I'll eventually find it and be scared. It's the most underhanded way of threatening me he could possibly think of. He has also proven that it is physically within his reach to do so. Again, he is literally taking photos of my conversation with friends I'm having while hiding in the school building 7 minutes before the note appears in my notes app. He demonstrates he is on my iPad or Mac or whatever device he takes the photo from. All he would have to do is switch apps and type 7 words. Therefore, it's really obvious to determine who wrote this simply by using common sense. Meaning, while I don't have a video of Kai writing the note in my notes app, I know I didn't write this myself, and I know the only other person who demonstrated that they have access to and were on my Apple device taking photos of my conversations with friends 7 minutes prior to when the note appeared was Kai. I also know that Kai was clearly upset with me utilizing the protective order to get him to leave my apartment, as shown in these screenshots from that day. That can explain the threatening and foreboding nature of the note. This is also the same guy who is of the belief that because he would occasionally leave me encouraging notes in my notes app, that is definitive and certifiable proof that he is not abusive.
If I was so dead set on abusing them, I would feel absolutely zero inclination to even leave them encouraging notes like this. So if your goal was to make me look abusive, showing everyone how I wasn't abusive to you is kind of a terrible way of doing that.
You heard it from the expert Kai Weiss himself, folks. If your abuser ever did anything nice for you ever in life, that means that there is absolutely no fathomable way that they were ever abusive to you. If they wrote you 2 encouraging notes throughout the course of your relationship, that is foolproof evidence that they were never abusive to you. I don't know if he genuinely believes this or if he's pretending to believe this, but either way, I hope people realize how asinine of a take that is. But just in case you don't, your abuser can be nice to you. It's actually a common tactic utilized by abusers to maintain the control they've taken. Here's a snippet from an article from the National Domestic Violence Hotline about it. I'll also link the article below for anyone who is interested. But it says, since abusive behavior is a choice, it happens when that person chooses it, which isn't something you can predict. The loving, kind, sweet act they put on for you is a primary tactic they use to maintain the control they've taken. Moving back and forth between the good and bad behavior is an intentional manipulation tactic that plays upon your desire for them to return to the good behavior. You may find yourself questioning your own actions, especially if they blame you for their abusive behaviors, because clearly they can choose to behave lovingly. But it's important to recognize that their minimizing and excuses for the behavior are part of the abuse too. If they were abusive all the time, you might be more likely to leave or seek help sooner, since you wouldn't be reminded of how it used to be. So yes, Kai left me encouraging notes in my notes app every once in a while, and he is also still my abuser. Those two things can coexist simultaneously. I speak to that in the thread. Let's continue. Kai typed, "Eventually this will catch up to you," 19 minutes after he was told by an officer that he was not allowed to contact me, live in my apartment, or be within 250 feet of my person. Kai has left me notes like these before, but clearly in a more affirmative/loving fashion. This was his way of flipping that tradition. Instead of, "Check your notes, I left something sweet for you in there," it was his way of trying to threaten me in a very low-key and indiscriminate manner. He wanted to get the last word in without texting it to me directly. It was very underhanded in a context most wouldn't understand without explanation. This is why it's important to understand the broader context of abusive relationships. It's why certain behaviors deeply alarm some victims over others. We each have cultures in our relationships. This speaks to the idea that abusers can flip what once were behaviors that were loving into threatening actions meant to throw their victim off or instill fear within them. But according to Kai, apparently this note isn't a threat.
Hello, I'm me. I'm Kai. For one, again, I never wrote this. And let me entertain this. Let's say I did. Eventually this will catch up to you is not a threat.
It very much is though. Writing "eventually this will catch up to you" implies that I did something wrong and that I will face consequences in the future for it. It's foreboding as shit. And by that, I mean it implies or seems to imply that something bad is going to happen to me, the person receiving the note. The fact that he can't even see how that could possibly be the case makes me very, very fearful about how perceptive he is regarding how people come to understand and make meaning through language like this.
Eventually this will catch up to you is not a threat. Especially not a threat to your person. Just as me tweeting about you in this situation on my social media platform privately isn't one either, which is why, again, this charge was dismissed and never held up.
For the millionth time and for the love of all that is holy, my brother in Christ, the charges were dismissed because you took a plea deal. How many times must I reiterate that?
Prosecution felt no confidence in it, like with all 7 of my other charges.
No. How do I explain this in plain English? If prosecution felt no confidence in the violation of the protective order or any of the other charges that made it past the preliminary trial hearing, why did Kai not only get charged with all of them, but indicted with all of them? And if you don't know what an indictment is, it is the formal notification that a grand jury has brought charges against a defendant, or Kai in this case. A grand jury is convened in some criminal cases to decide if prosecutors have enough evidence to go to trial. After the indictment is brought, the defendant is formally arraigned on criminal charges. Kai got indicted for the misdemeanor violation of a protective order, but also grand larceny, strangulation, and preventing a 911 call. It's almost as if prosecution was abundantly confident in all of these charges till the very end of the case and only dropped them to persuade Kai to take a plea deal. But I digress. Let me finish reading the thread. That was his first protective order violation. Friending me in my notes app 19 minutes after being served the preliminary, I definitely meant emergency protective order, and being told to get the fuck out of my house in 2 hours. It deadass took him less than half an hour to screw the protective order up. He was later arrested for this violation on December 11th, 2021. This was the tweet announcing that. I haven't made any other mention of a protective order violation after this tweet anywhere. The other 3 violations were kept a secret from the public in favor of the trial. I then attached the screenshot of the tweet I made back on December 11th, 2021, where I stated, "He got arrested for violating my protective order. Good night." That concludes thread 1 about PO violation 1. Here are the last few things that Kai said about the thread that I do want to respond to drive home my points.
Again, this note would have never held up in court, and I'm almost insulted that I'm even giving this bullshit any of my time.
Alright, that's crazy. I don't know what else to say other than it, along with the rest of the charges he insisted not have sufficient evidence, was indeed held up in court. It held up in court during the preliminary trial hearing, it held up in court during the indictment process, it held up in court during the scheduled jury trial. It even held up in court until the plea agreement, which is why all of these charges are written here, indicating that they all carried over and were not dismissed until the very end of the case as part of a concession for the guilty plea. But it's fine, honestly, if he wants to believe otherwise, I don't care enough to help that.
The other 3 charges were kept a secret because one of them lacked intent and the other 2 were filed while I was in jail. So it would be physically impossible for me to violate the order the other 2 times. Or, just hear me out, I kept the other 3 protective order violations a secret from the public because of the reason I already stated, that being that I was trying to preserve the integrity of the case for the trial. And I knew better than to continuously speak about the case while court proceedings were ongoing, unlike Kai. I don't know why he does this in this video so often, but it's almost like he tries to speak for me, I guess. For example, I'll say, I took this action because of this reason, and then Kai will be like, actually, you took this action because you're spiteful, bitter, and want to ruin my life. And I just can't help him. This is what I mean when I say that I just can't convince everyone to understand me or open their hearts up to the idea that they don't know everything about this case. Some people are truthfully hell-bent on believing me to be somebody who isn't in alignment with who I am at all. And that's fine. You can believe whatever it is that you want about me, but this is why I said at the beginning of the series that I'm not here to convince those who are already dead set on misunderstanding me of anything. It's such a lost cause. Anyways, this is the last clip of Kai's I'll include regarding the first protective order violation. Omnia wouldn't even have the power to get any of these protective order violation charges if they didn't lie about me strangling them, straddling them, and punching them in the face over and over and over again.
I think this is just really funny considering the context being that Kai pled guilty to doing exactly that in the court of law, in open court. Maybe not the strangulation part, but the domestic assault part?
Stood up and he told the court, no, I did it. I assaulted her. So he stood in open court and admitted on the record that he had committed an assault on you that day. He just straight up stood up and told the judge, yes, I committed an assault on her, and that's now a matter of public record. Stood up and said, no, I committed an assault and battery.
Like, bro really said, yeah, I did assault and batter Nia on December 3rd, 2021 without hesitation in open court, but then as soon as he gets online, as soon as he hops on his laptop, as soon as he gets on youtube.com, all of a sudden he's empowered to say that I lied about him doing that to me and claiming that that's the only reason I was able to obtain any of my PO violations. Nothing is real anymore, guys. Everything is fake. I don't know what it is about the internet, but people act so differently on here. It's insane. It's just so wild coming from the person who has quote-unquote freely, voluntarily, and intelligently pled guilty to assaulting and battering me in open court, but then as soon as he gets on the internet, he wants to act like he never did that. I cannot. Anyways, next thread. This thread was also created on April 23rd, 2023. I tweet, the second time my abuser directly violated my protective order, including the evidence I have of Kai's second PO violation. A thread. Legal names blurred. On April 23rd, 2022, happy 1 year anniversary today, lol, Kai slid into the Patreon DMs at 6:45 p.m. and sent me this long, pining text despite being told 8 days earlier it is illegal for him to directly contact me, i.e. text me, call me, etc. Narcissistic hoovering, anyone? I then attach a screenshot of the message Kai sent me on Patreon. Here's what it says. I'm writing this here because I know this won't reach you. I wonder if you miss me as much as I miss you. I had so many plans for us before you did what you did, and now I feel like time is running out, so I guess I'll consider this a place of prayer. I pray that you're brought back home. I pray I can protect you again. I pray I can hear all your feelings and you hear mine. I pray with the options we have now, we can nourish the feelings we ignored. I love you, Hannah. I miss you. I miss Gabby. I miss Minnie. There's not a day that goes by I'm not reminded of you. Not a day that goes by I don't think of you. I wish I could tell you the things you don't know. I wish I could pull you out of all the influence. I wish I could show you what our life could have been. The space I worked so hard to create feels so vacant without you here. I'm hurt by your words and actions, but I know they come from a place of hurt. I'm hurt by your impulses, but I know they come from a place of upset. We have so many unresolved feelings against one another. I pray and pray you find your footing and find me at the end of it. I can help you, but I can't help you like this. A part of me is glad your channel is gone because maybe with its removal, you can free yourself from the ties you so strongly held on to. I hate fighting against you. I hate defending myself against you. I hate being upset at you. I used to wake up and kiss your face every day. I saw the person you never thought you would become, and I hope through you seeing just a bit of them now, you're reminded of everything I used to say. I hope every time you look at Gabriella, you're reminded of me. I hope the guilt manifests itself. Home is not home without the both of us, Starlight. I'm not going to get my opportunity to say these words to you until the court forces you to hear them, but at least I can put them here. I hate what we do to each other, but I will always have a soft spot for you, and if love is as strong as God says it is, I hope you can come around when it matters most. Amen. These messages are incredibly reminiscent of, I think, what would historically work for Kai to get me to fall back towards him every time I wanted to break up with him in the past. Every time he would mistreat me, every time he would tell me to shut up, grab me really hard, push me, or act like he didn't care about my feelings, safety, or well-being, he would say stuff just like this. These types of messages would make me feel like whatever I was upset at him for was not worth ending our relationship over because we had such a quote-unquote deep bond. This is what I mean when I say narcissistic hoovering. Hoovering is a manipulation tactic used to suck victims back into toxic relationship cycles. Someone who hoovers fears that their target will get away from them, so they may engage in a number of different behaviors such as love bombing, feigning crisis, stalking, or smear campaigns in order to suck up all their targets' time, energy, and attention. Hoovering is all about forcing engagement by any means necessary with someone who would prefer to disengage and is a form of emotional abuse that's commonly used by those with personality disorders, especially narcissistic personality disorder or NPD. One large example of hoovering is making intense proclamations of love or becoming overly apologetic and trying to promise change behavior despite not demonstrating anything of the sort. Since hoovering can be insidious, it's hard to tell when you're being hoovered, but one of the big signs that someone is hoovering you is that they contact you randomly. People who hoover may repeatedly come in and out of your life. One moment they may seem to accept that the relationship is over, but just as it feels like things are healing, they come back into your world again. They might use nostalgia as a weapon, reaching out with statements like, I was driving and heard this song on the radio. It made me think of you. Hope you're doing well. Or, prime example with this protective order violation, I used to wake up and kiss your face every day. I saw the person you never thought you would become, and I hope through you seeing just a bit of them now, you're reminded of everything I used to say. Another large sign of hoovering is that they tell you how much they love you, which includes extreme proclamations of love. You're their soulmate. You're the only one who truly understands them. They can't imagine being with anybody else. While these love bombing statements may feel good, they're also highly manipulative. If you still haven't gotten over the other person, it's pretty easy, utilizing this tactic, for them to lure you right back into the toxic relationship. Examples here being, I wonder if you miss me as much as I miss you. I pray I can protect you again. I love you. I miss you. There's not a day that goes by I'm not reminded of you. Not a day that goes by I don't think of you, etc. I'll link this article below in case anyone would like to read it in its entirety. And of course, this isn't to diagnose Kai with NPD or any other mental disorder, whether that is mood or personality related. That is not my job. That is the job of a professional and licensed psychiatrist. This is only to say that the behavior that Kai engages in within this protective order violation draws parallels to and is highly reminiscent of the tactic of hoovering. That doesn't mean he is or is not a narcissist. It just means his behavior here appears to be congruent with narcissistic hoovering. Just thought I'd clarify that. Moving on with the thread, this second violation is very easy to prove because in those screenshots that it's very clearly Kai's Patreon account, and this is very clearly something only he would message me. I obviously didn't message him back and did what I was supposed to do, go to the proper authorities. Another important thing of note, my full 2-year protective order was granted on April 15th, 2022, and Kai was served that paperwork the same day. He knew he wasn't supposed to message or contact me in any way because a judge told him in court 8 days before this violation happened. Again, if you watched the previous video in this series, you can recall that my first permanent protective order was granted on April 15th, 2022. This second violation was a mere week later. But Kai had a weird way of explaining this PO violation back on May 13th, 2022, about a month after the violation. Here he is explaining it on a stream he titled My Last Stream.
On April 23rd, Hana called the police because a message was sent to them to their Patreon, and it wasn't supposed to go to them. The problem was that Gabby, and my new cat, Callie, slept on my fucking keyboard while I was going through our messages. And while I was going through our messages, I typed something out because I was really hurt. And it was supposed to stay in the little, like, message thingy, like the little where you type your messages at, like in the Twitch chat. It was supposed to stay in there. And, like, I went downstairs to go and get some food. And the moment that I go upstairs, Callie is on my laptop. And come to find out, the message that was in the little thing sent. So Hana sees the message and instantly goes to the police. It wasn't a bad message at all. I didn't threaten them or anything like that.
One, it doesn't matter if it was a bad message or non-threatening, Kai is not supposed to contact me whatsoever. But more importantly, you mean to tell me that Kai's cat, Callie, perfectly lifted their paw and clicked only on the enter key or only hit the mouse pad? Because if you ever had a cat get on your keyboard, you know for a fucking fact that they aren't too gracious with it. It's just so unserious. I would expect to see at least some keyboard smash somewhere in this message if Kai was seriously telling the truth about this, but the message is pristine. Furthermore, in his most recent video, this is how he chooses to explain it.
I wrote it in the midst of looking back at our Patreon messages for anything significant I needed to use for litigation. And given I had no closure and our breakup was very fresh, I wrote how I felt at the time. In the midst of finishing my expression of all those feelings, the message sent after I closed the Patreon app. I didn't think anything of it because I was sure Omnia had me blocked at the time.
Sorry, I forgot to block my abuser on fucking Patreon of all places. Like, I literally did not remember that. That's such a random website to message someone on. And also, wait, Kai said the Patreon message was sent after he closed out of the site. Let's not even attempt to ascertain how that's physically possible, but Kai also somehow knew that it was sent after he closed out? How? Also notice how there is no mention of Callie whatsoever this time around. I guess it would be too embarrassing to use her as a scapegoat now that it's been a year since the violation. Whatever, you come to your own conclusions about why his story consistently changes on this. Let's debunk some more things Kai said about this protective order violation.
The reason this charge never held up in court is because the message was non-threatening.
No, I'm definitely repeating myself again, but the reason the charge was dismissed was because I know you know Kai took a plea deal. I swear y'all are gonna start hearing because Kai took a plea deal repeat in your dreams at this point with how much I'm repeating it. Also, whether the message was threatening or non-threatening, it wouldn't matter because it would still count as a violation of the protective order for the simple reason that Kai is not supposed to message me at all. He is not allowed to contact me. I promise you, it's very, very simple. The nature of the message does not matter. He shouldn't be sending the message to me whatsoever. As a matter of fact, here's a compilation of 2 lawyers reiterating what a no contact order of protection actually means, just to really drive home the point.
There are other things. The judge can order you to have no contact with that person whatsoever. That means written, over the phone, text messages, Facebook, emails, writing notes on cars, doing whatever. You can't have any contact if a judge orders you not to have any contact with them.
For an order of protection or restraining order, which means they are asking the court to order you to not have any contact. That means you have to stay away, no contact with them. You are the respondent. If you've been served, then you're the respondent, and you're the one who's going to be or might be ordered to stay away and not have contact with that person. And no contact means anything. In-person contact, electronic contact, email, instant message, text message, all that. You have to stay away.
Trust. Things are much more simple than Kai makes it out to be. If a person I have a no contact protective order against attempts to contact me, that is a violation of that protective order. You can be nice, you could be mean, you could be threatening, you could be non-threatening, you could be asking to suck my toes, or you could be asking me to meet you outside to scrap. It literally does not matter. The fact that you're contacting me at all is what makes it a violation, not the content of the message.
And there was no intent behind it to break the order. I never meant for this message to be sent to Omnia.
So you mean to tell me you went to Patreon, went to the messages tab, then wrote a message, left it in the messages tab, then was colored surprised that the message was sent? Like, what was your intent when doing all that? Besides, it doesn't even matter what the intent was. Ever heard of the saying impact over intent? You may not intend to break the protective order, but the fact that the message was sent did break the protective order, and the message being sent impacts me negatively because I don't want to be contacted by Kai, period. I don't want to be doted upon, I don't want to be threatened, I don't want to be called, I don't want to be contacted. That is why I have the no contact order. I cannot explain it in plainer language. Kai is not to contact me.
Again, I'm not denying that this is my Patreon account. I'm simply letting it be known that this evidence is 1 week.
Holy fuck, this is so full of shit. He literally just admitted to the fact that it was indeed his Patreon account. So what about this evidence is weak? Kai is not supposed to contact me. Kai contacted me. There is no contest. There is no contest about whether or not it was Kai. There is no contest about whether or not he contacted me. So this evidence is more than sufficient. If we went to trial, Kai would certifiably be found guilty for this protective order violation. Editing Omnia here. Sorry, can I just say, let's assume I really wanted to give Kai the benefit of the doubt on literally every single thing he says. He genuinely makes it so hard to do that. Not only does he change his story about how the Patreon message was sent, and he doesn't provide us with information about the specifics of when he claims he was served the EPO, which makes his story feel vague and lacks concreteness, but he also actively makes efforts to downplay how threatening the note left in my notes app was. He actively makes efforts to downplay how strong my evidence is of his Patreon message being a violation to the PO. Like, why does he consistently discount or dismiss these blatant facts about the case if he's so innocent? He can't even agree that a threat is threatening. He can't even agree that him violating my protective order is violating my protective order. It's truly mind-boggling and goes to show that he will never give credit where credit is due when it comes to this case or any evidence I manage to bring forth. This is why I said I don't care to convince people who already have their minds made up about the case because of whatever Kai told them to believe. I know for a fact that Kai will never fess up to the things he's put me through, even if the evidence was put right up against his face. And even when he does fess up, like he did with the misdemeanor assault and battery charge, he wants to continue to feign innocence online. This whole series speaks to the fact that he will never just lay the defenses down and be truthful, honest, or transparent about literally anything he's done. It is plain as day. Saying that this evidence is weak is such a cop-out.
And 2 was never meant to be shared with them.
So again, Kai went to Patreon, typed a message he wanted to send to me in the messages tab, and didn't mean to have that message sent. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to put 2 and 2 together. Was it impossible for Kai to write this message on a Google Doc or in an online diary? Besides, meaning and intention don't matter in the case of a protective order violation. The message was sent, the message should not have been sent. That is a violation.
And again, if your intention is to make me look like I'm abusive, showing people how much I missed you all the way up to the point that I would even say something like this is not a way of doing that.
Here we go again with the idea that abusers can never be nice to their victims. I'm not even gonna waste my breath here. I already explained why that is such a reductive understanding of abuse earlier.
Omnia got this protective order to make my life worse and to take as much as they could from me. It had nothing to do with fear or safety, so forgive me if I think it's a load of bullshit that they keep bringing up how they were so scared shitless. No one who was scared shitless tells everyone they know about what happened to them, let alone FaceTimes their friend the same night that they took action about their alleged abuse.
You heard it here first, folks. Expert Kai Weiss drops a banger take once again. If you ever dare tell your friends about the fact that you just recently exited an abusive relationship, you are not a true victim. If you FaceTime a close friend of yours or talk to the people in your personal life about leaving your abuser shortly after leaving them, you are not in fear of your safety. believe. Now, not only are abuse victims being condemned for waiting too long to tell others that they're being abused, but we are now being condemned for telling others too soon. Bruh. What is this, Goldilocks? It's far too hot, it's far too cold. Is there ever a just right? In all seriousness though, I'd wager that that behavior is actually a sign of a survivor being more fearful for their safety. They are quick to tell everyone in their immediate circle that this is happening to them because leaving an abusive relationship is often incredibly dangerous, and they probably want to make sure that everyone that cares about them is acutely aware of and in the know about recent events in case they are to disappear all of a sudden. The reality is that the most dangerous time for a survivor is when they leave the abusive partner. 75% of domestic violence related homicides occur upon separation, and there is a 75% increase of violence upon separation for at least 2 years. So yeah, actually, I'd say me FaceTiming my friend or telling my supervisors at work about what happened to me is nothing but a sign of me being proactive in fortifying myself and allowing my support systems to be aware of what is happening with me behind the scenes in the event that something bad were to happen to me.
You abusing your protective order for vengeful, stupid, and arbitrary reasons does not change the fact that you over-exaggerated and lied about what happened to you in order to even get it. Nor that you abused the order in the first place. If I was sitting here going, I'm gonna beat your ass as soon as this is over, or I'm going to make your life a living hell, maybe it would make sense. But someone pining about the moments that they spent with you because they valued them, and some note you wrote out of desperation to put me behind bars is insane.
No, because you know what I think is insane? I think it's insane that Kai is acting like he can't read. Like he is acting as if he is illiterate. It actually boggles my mind. Truthfully, I am surprised by that. I thought he could, but I guess not, so I'll read it for him. The respondent, which is Kai, shall have no contact of any kind with the petitioner, which is me, Omnia. Kai admits that that is indeed his Patreon account. He admits that he did indeed send it. He is not supposed to contact me. He did contact me. That is a violation. He can attempt to skirt around that all he wants by blaming it on intent or on how threatening or non-threatening the message was, but it doesn't change the fact that he was not supposed to contact me and did, which warrants a violation. Whew. And that concludes the second part of my video regarding all things concerning the first 2 protective order violations, including debunking every claim Kai made about them in his most recent video about the case. The next topic I will be covering is the last 2 protective order violations. You know how I said in my last video that I was going to split the protective order stuff into 2 parts? Yeah, I started working on protective order violation 3 and 4 in this video, and then realized I needed to split that video into 2. So now, all things protective order related is now split into 3 parts. Whoa! This series is definitely taking years off of my life. Anyways, stay tuned for that, and until next time, keep your wits about you. Bye!